All right, this video, we're going to jump into how I personally use science to age in reverse. Now, the saying age in reverse is pretty popular, but I want to be really clear up front. I'm not chasing immortality and I'm not guessing about this. I use data. I'm a PhD scientist. I study aging biology and I've done this for many decades now. And I don't necessarily follow the trends, although some things may be trendy at the moment. But what I do is I measure, I test, I adjust, I retest, and things evolve, as we get older, as circumstances change, things need to be adapted. But in this video, I'm going to talk about biomarkers that I look at, supplements that I use, peptides that I use. People ask me about these all the time. But the most important thing I want you to take away is not what I personally do. It's how you can build your own personalized longevity plan using science instead of just what's cool. So I'll be honest, the reason I care about aging isn't only about vanity. I care about how I look. Of course, it's my life. I don't need to justify that or explain that, but I also am aware that looks fade and it's not all about looks. So what I care about most is being able to live later in life. I want to walk on the beach. I want to travel. I want to be active. I want to play with my future grandkids if I'm blessed to have them. And importantly, I want to keep my mind intact for as long as possible. My grandmother was very blessed to live into her 90s, but in that last decade, her life really wasn't the same. She had signs of dementia. She really couldn't remember things as well. She just wasn't the same person. And if there's anything that I can do to control my own risk of that happening to me, then, I'm going to pay attention and I'm going to do it. So that's what this video is about, not just looking better, but feeling better at every decade of your life. So first up, let's talk about aging isn't a feeling, it's something measurable. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is thinking that aging shows up as just wrinkles, fatigue, low motivation, but we have what's called biological age, and that shows up years earlier quietly, and we can see that in our biomarkers. There's fancy tests that you can do looking into epigenetics. We're not really going to get into that today, but there are just blood tests that you can look at that are going to really give you a picture of what's going on inside. You would just the way you get your car inspected every few months, you got to think of your body the same way. So my approach starts with testing. I regularly look at things like cardiometabolic markers, so cholesterol, ApoB, triglycerides. Then I look at fasting insulin, glucose, A1C. Those are things that tell me how efficiently my body is handling energy, whether my cardiovascular risk is moving in the right direction. We at least want to slow things down. We can't fully impact everything, but we do have some control. Then I also pay attention to inflammation and immune signaling. So CRP, that's a marker for inflammation, chronic inflammation. And we know that chronic inflammation accelerates almost every aspect of aging, from the heart, the neurological system, so the brain, the immune system, mitochondria. It's super, super critical to, mitigate that inflammation with lifestyle factors and peptides and things if we need to. Hormones are absolutely essential as well. But I will say, as far as the lab tests go with hormones, symptoms matter more than the absolute numbers. These normal ranges, it's kind of upsetting because women are over here suffering and they're being told, well, your testosterone levels look normal. And it's, they could be feeling a lot better and have a lot better quality of life if they were supplementing a little bit of testosterone, just as an example. So I always tell people, yes, do the testing. Of course, we do need that information, but we also need to layer in the symptoms and how you're feeling, and a really good doctor. And by the way, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not giving medical advice, but my goal is just to tell you how to advocate for your own health and make decisions for your own health based on the information that, you're learning here in this video from other sources. Don't just take my word for it. Get multiple sources of information. But all that I'm trying to say is you can push back on your doctor. They're working for you. So if you feel like crap and they're telling you your labs are normal, then you can push back. You can, you go find another doctor if you have to, but it's your health. So that's the whole point I'm really trying to make. Now back to the blood work. So the other things that I would look at are liver, kidney, mitochondrial stress markers. So things like homocysteine, for example, and, looking at how the liver's functioning and how it's detoxifying, whether or not that's off. We can tell a lot from those numbers. Also, energy production, resilience, all these things are foundational for healthy aging. Now, again, the biomarkers are great, but it's really more about how you feel. And sometimes even when something feels off, it doesn't immediately show on blood work either. So I always just stay curious, pay attention to my body. I journal things. I look for patterns. So I have a journal by my bed. I make sure that most nights I'm, just writing down kind of what happened that day, how I was feeling, things like that. You can get as detailed as you want. You can detail out what you ate, how your stress is, and all that. But I also have my Oura Ring, which helps me to keep track of things as well, as far as stress and sleep and things like that. So obviously I love the data, but it's also about how you feel. We don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on all the tests. You can if you want, but that's not the goal. You just need repeatable markers that you can track over time, and you need to know what's the most important for you, like heart health, insulin signaling, sugar, that kind of thing. Those are really critical. And I really like using Function Health. There's a lot of good testing companies out there, and I'll put some links below. But Function Health is what I've been using for a few years, and that gives you everything. You go twice a year. And then in between, my doctor that does my hormones, they measure my blood work as well. So we look at cholesterol, mainly cholesterol and hormones, and then anything else as needed. And then once a year, I do the full blood workup. So I like the data. It gives me something concrete to work with. And then I live by the idea that what gets measured gets managed. I'm in sales, and that's one of our mottos. So I think that works really well for your health as well. If you're not looking at it, you're not paying attention to it, then you're probably not managing it, and it can get out of hand, especially if we're talking about cardiovascular health or things like that, insulin, diabetes, prediabetes. It doesn't just happen overnight. So there are clues to be looking for. Now, lab tests tell me what's happening, and then biofeedback, this is what it feels like to live in this body, right? I pay close attention to my sleep quality, like I was saying, my Oura Ring, my recovery. Not that I'm like addicted to it. I check it once a day, but I just want to look at patterns to make sure like nothing's shifting. And that's what I like about the Oura Ring. You will see like patterns, and it'll start to warn you like, hey, your sleep's been dropping off the last few weeks. Maybe get it together, girl. That's basically how I feel like it's talking to me. So it's good to look at the patterns. The day-to-day fluctuations are not all that important. It's more like week to week, month to month. So resting heart rate variability, those are good signals that your nervous system is balanced, you're recovering well, and that's obviously good for long-term health as well. So those are very important for longevity. And if you don't have an Oura Ring, there's other ways of when you wake up in the morning, how refreshed do you feel? Do you feel like you're getting a good night's sleep and that stuff? And then there's body composition. So I actually invested in, it's not a huge investment, it was like $200. I used my HSA funds one year, but I got a bioimpedance scale. This is so much better than just a number because number one, scale weight fluctuates up and down all the time. But what really matters is not the number, it's how much muscle we have and how much fat mass we have. So when we lose weight, we really want to be losing fat, not muscle, right? So that's where the bioimpedance scale really helps. Most gyms have these too. So you could also use the one at the gym. So it's not subjective. It's very tied into your health parameters, right? And I can tell that if I start a new training program or I'm using a growth hormone peptide, that I want to see measurable changes on that scale. And I do. And it's very, very nice to have that tool. And then there's the subjective stuff like energy, digestion, mood, resilience to stress. This is more where the journaling comes into play, or because we aren't really going to remember from day to day. So just kind of paying attention to those things. And then I don't treat my wearables or the bioimpedance scale like gospel. It's just, they're not perfect, right? They give you trends, and that's all they're really good for, is like going to have variability day to day, but it's the month to month that's most important. So if your labs look great, but your sleep is terrible, your HRV is tanking, then your biology is still trying to tell you something. And that's why I like to use multiple methods. So if you're ignoring that, it can lead to burnout eventually. You don't want to ignore things too long, right? Now, let's talk about using data to guide the intervention, so we're not just guessing. And this is where, a lot of people that just want to jump straight into supplements or peptides without really asking the important question. I see this all the time. And yeah, we all want to jump on board. We all want to feel better, but it does help if you just take a moment. And this is, again, where I recommend journaling. But the question that you want to be asking is, what problem am I trying to solve, right? Not just like, okay, that's a cool peptide. That one's doing this. My friend's using that one. Let's try this. What problem are you trying to solve, right? And then let the data guide that. So if you have, let's say, oxidative stress or, your detox burden, like you have that high homocysteine level, then I would support more focus on like the redox balance, and we'll get to things that can help with that. Then, or for example, your mitochondrial efficiency is lagging, not necessarily something that you're going to test for, but it might be low energy, poor recovery. Then you could support that cellular energy metabolism system. If your recovery is impaired and you're not, you're working out, but you're like sore for days and just not feeling like it's, you're recovering well, then it's not necessarily that you need to stack more tools. You want to work on your sleep. How's your sleep? Is that dialed in? How's your inflammation? How's your stress? All these things are going to contribute to that. So start there before kind of diving into the more advanced tools, if you will. And I was always about the basics first, by the way. I didn't jump into that yet, but we really want to be focused on the sleep, quality of your sleep, getting enough sleep, 7 to 8 hours ideally, getting deep sleep and REM sleep, good nutrition, strength training, walking, steps, that kind of thing. We do want to have all those basics before, again, we start jumping into more advanced tools, because it's just like garbage in, garbage out. If you're not supporting that foundation, then no amount of peptides is really going to fix that. Now, let's talk a little bit about NAD plus and glutathione, why I'm using them, and I'm very consistent with them. Pretty much in the last year, I've started utilizing these tools more strategically, and I just turned 50. So I just want to kind of discuss how that. So this is before we even talk about peptides. This is really supporting that cellular environment. No signal, again, peptide is a signal. No signal is going to work well in a system that's underpowered or inflamed or overwhelmed. So once we have our basics dialed in, that's where NAD and glutathione can come in as well. And I know they're trendy right now, but I'm saying they're not trendy. They're very foundational molecules. They sit at the center of how our cells age. So let's talk about NAD first. NAD plus, it's a coenzyme found in every single cell in your body. You cannot make energy without it. You cannot repair your DNA. You can't maintain healthy mitochondrial function without it. It plays a role in cellular energy production, mitochondrial efficiency, DNA repair, stress resilience. And the key point is that NAD plus levels start to decline as we age. They decline even faster if there's chronic stress, poor sleep, inflammation, metabolic dysfunction. Okay. So everybody's going to be a little bit different here, but it's just one of those key cellular, like you have to have NAD or you would be gone. So when people feel more fatigued or the resiliency is dropping or your recovery is dropping as you get older, it's probably not necessarily a motivation issue. It could be a cellular energy issue. It could be a hormone issue too. So that's why I always say start with the hormones. But if you're 40, 50, 60 above that stage of life, then using NAD plus can really help to support that cellular function, that baseline function. And by the way, it's not a stimulant. I think people get this kind of confused online because it's talked about so much in relation to energy. So people, I think, expect us like, it's going to be like drinking a Red Bull or something, and it's not at all. It's just basically supporting the systems that your body uses to produce energy. So it's definitely not supposed to feel like drinking a Red Bull. It's just supposed to make you feel more like yourself and more balanced, if you will. Okay, now let's talk about glutathione. So if NAD supports energy, repair, those processes, then glutathione supports protecting the cells and creating balance, helping with detox. So what it is, it's your body's master antioxidant. It plays a central role in helping the liver detox. It helps with immune regulation, and it also protects mitochondria from oxidative damage, which is the reactive oxygen species, which are critical. We need them, but in stressful situations, they can become more abundant and start to damage our DNA. So glutathione is kind of there to like clean house, if you will. And it's one of those things that it declines as we age. And so someone who's 50 myself, I use it consistently to support those pathways, the detox, the oxidative stress, the long-term cellular health, right? That's going to be important for our brain health, our immune system, our heart, critical, right? As we age. Now, here's how I want you to think about these. So I don't use NAD plus or glutathione necessarily as anti-aging hacks. Kind of hate that word. I use them to support the biology that allows me to age healthier, right? It's kind of just like filling up your bank account in a sense. Like you don't want to go into retirement broke. You also don't want to go into retirement with no NAD and no glutathione. It's a way of just supporting your lifestyle, if you will. So peptides are like signals for your body, and the signals are going to land better in a system that's energized, protected, and balanced. And NAD and glutathione, they just help create that environment for you. So that's why they're a very consistent part of my longevity plan. I plan to keep them long-term in my life, and not because they're trendy. As a biologist and someone that studies aging, I know how important they are to that longevity and to that health. And we now have better access to all of these things. So kind of just makes it even easier to support. Let's talk about supplements. And again, this is going to be about supporting biology. These are not to be shortcuts. You still have to do all the work. I know I feel like a broken record. I say this every time, but you still have to put in the work. You still have to get your sleep and eat good food and all those things. The supplements are here because sometimes we just don't have exactly what we need from our food, or we're just not getting as good of a quality of food as maybe our ancestors had, the depletion of the soil and whatnot. So supplements kind of get a bad rep because a lot of people do use them as trying to get around lifestyle, but that's backwards. We want to use supplements to support our biology that's already being stressed in a healthy way. Good stress. Okay, we have antioxidants that can help support and manage our oxidative stress, so support our mitochondria, just overall health. And we get antioxidants from food like blueberries and bright, colorful foods, but if we need extra support, we can add those in as well. So things like ALA, CoQ10, those are vitamin C, those are great to include. Urolithin A, this is something that is going to support mitochondrial quality. So it helps to clean up mitochondria and support, basically quality of mitochondria. Vitamins and minerals act as cofactors. I definitely use testing to figure out what's missing. And then I can use things like iron, zinc, selenium, what needs to be supported if it's low. And these really matter a lot for gut health. Your gut health has to be supported first and foremost, because absorption of these vitamins are going to depend and rely on a good gut being intact, but they also help to support biological functions and including gut health itself. So like zinc, for example. And then I like to think about heart health nutrients. This is another big one. So vascular aging, and this drives cognitive decline. And also, obviously, it's the number one killer of men and women, kidney disease, cardiovascular events. So it's super, super important for our blood to be pumping properly, that's how we get nutrients and blood and oxygen to our cells. So to our organs and tissues. So anyway, it's really important to use the labs to identify what's important. So before things start to worsen, and then you can use targeted heart support supplements accordingly. Things I like red yeast rice to help support. It's like a natural statin. So if you have any type of high cholesterol, that could be an option. But again, let's be honest, if you're not sleeping, moving, eating well, then supplements are probably you're just wasting your money in a sense. Okay, let's talk about sleep, training, and body composition. One of the most powerful anti-aging interventions that we have is lean muscle. So we can use our body composition data, that bioimpedance scale, right, to make changes here because we want to preserve our lean muscle, or ideally even add lean muscle as we get older. It's definitely harder, but we can do it. And then we use sleep metrics to confirm that you're actually recovering, and tracking performance to see whether adaptation has happened. So what do I mean by that? Using maybe an app or somehow recording, how much you're lifting that day, how many reps, how much weight, how many sets, and making progress week to week. So maybe you're adding a rep, or you're adding a set, or you're lifting a heavier weight. You're making some type of progress. That's another form of tracking. And then if your recovery metrics start to dip, then the idea isn't to push harder. You can change your training volume, maybe make some changes to your sleep. It's winter. We maybe need a little more sleep. It's just the body needs more recovery during this time. Manage your stress load. Sometimes that's not possible. If you are super stressed, you're just going through a super stressful time, then maybe it's time to dial back on some of the training so that you can build that resilience back up. I also look at hormones on a quarterly basis and determine what needs to be adjusted. Hormones obviously are going to influence recovery. They're going to influence motivation, sleep, brain health, body composition. And it changes dramatically as we age, especially in our 40s and 50s as women. Hormones are definitely shifting. So we need to make sure we're supporting that first and foremost. Yes, that is a choice, but I would say that these are hormones we've had our whole life. And without them, our body just doesn't work as well. Like our heart needs estrogen. Every cell in our body has estrogen receptors. So once estrogen's gone, that's why everything starts to fail. It's not just a matter of vanity. It's critical to your biology. So again, don't just take my word. Go read. I'll put some books and articles below. Follow educators that are there to support you and do your research. But I would highly recommend doing that research. Now, we don't need perfect data, but again, directional data that's going to help us make better decisions over time. All right, now on to how I use peptides. And I am very intentional about this part. Yes, peptides are trendy. They're very cool, but peptides are, again, like a very critical part of our biology. Most of these are naturally produced by our body, used as signaling molecules to communicate from cell to cell, tell the body what to do. So they don't override our biology. I think of them as very supportive, supporting things that maybe are being challenged at a particular time and place, maybe just because of age or whatever the case may be. They're not shortcuts. I mean, people can see them that way and that's your choice, but I'm just telling you that biologically they're signals, and signals work when the system that's receiving them is healthy enough to respond. So yes, some peptides, GLPs, can make us healthier and kind of seem like they're a free cheat pass, but I would argue that that's not the case. If you're not utilizing them to make those lifestyle changes, then it's going to backfire at some point. You really need to do the supportive work to make sure that you're going to maintain that result long term and you're not having to jack up the dose and get more and more side effects just to see the results. So I'll stop preaching for now, but that was the point to make. Like, most peptides work better with lifestyle. My point is that GLPs, yes, they can work the other way around. They can actually give you a little bit of a helping hand until you make those lifestyle changes. But I would argue there's really no avoiding the lifestyle changes. Kind of comes with the territory of being a healthy human. And if you want to live long and you're watching this video, then I assume that's the case. So, okay. So back to peptides. I don't stack everything at once, especially not at first, because you really want to see how your body responds to a particular peptide before adding more into it. Every peptide is different and you might respond differently to it. So this is what I tell my clients, like, give it a few weeks to see really what's going on, pay attention to your body, and then you can add in another one and, do the same process. Now, if you've tried 5 different peptides and you know how your body responds, sure, you can stack them. We have tons of peptides in our body all the time working together. There's no magical number. I just think it's better to focus on the lifestyle and then use the peptides strategically. So every peptide that I use specifically, it's part of my longevity plan for a reason that it's well thought out. The first one I use is GLP-based peptides. So I did use these to lose weight. I had about 22 pounds. I lost about 22 pounds, and it wasn't something that was a lifestyle issue for me. I was dialed in on strength training, getting my steps, nutrition. I don't think it could have been any more dialed in, to be honest. And the weight was just coming on and on and on. And there was not a lot that I could do about that. Inflammation, all that. So anyway, I did end up going on a GLP-1, microdosing it, tremendously changed my life. And I did lose weight, but at this point, I'm continuing to use it as a metabolic signaling tool, not as a weight loss tool. Very small microdose. But just for other people watching, why you might find this helpful would be that as we age, insulin sensitivity declines, right? You may notice that your hunger signal changes. You're hungry all the time. You can't seem to be satisfied. You're snacking more. Could be stress, sure. Could just be that your system has changed. Your signaling pathways have changed. And our metabolic flexibility definitely changes with age. And especially in our modern environment, whether it be the food that we eat, like the food that we have access to, the fast food and all the things, which we do have control over, but we also don't have control sometimes over the stress and the other environmental things that are contributing to some of this changes in metabolic health. I don't like to have a victim mentality, but to some extent, it's, there's not a whole lot we can do about some of those things, right? So it's biology. It's not just lack of willpower is what I'm saying. Okay. So don't feel like it's your fault, where yes, you can make some changes and make some improvements, but GLP-1, these peptides, they're signaling molecules, they can help you. They can help regulate appetite. They can improve insulin sensitivity. They can reduce some of that metabolic noise that's happening. They can reduce the food noise that's happening as we get older. For me, that metabolic stability, that's foundational. And even though my blood looked okay, it was, again, something was going wrong. I didn't have high inflammation. A1C was a little elevated, lipids were a little elevated. So I made that decision to bring in the GLP-1 and those things improved. And now, it's just about maintaining it. So it's just for me microdosing, and it's something that I see as a longevity tool. Again, the body composition changes are extremely important for our overall health, but also it's important for brain health, lowering inflammation. Alzheimer's, that's directly impacted by inflammation. Cardiovascular health, directly impacted by inflammation. Obviously, diabetes, all of these things that we see as human diseases, that the four horsemen, those are improved by lowering inflammation, and these peptides do help with that. So now let's just say that they work best when we pay attention to our protein, have adequate protein, resistance training, eating correctly, eating good food, healthy food, 80-20, right? We don't have to eat healthy all the time, but we should try to get what our body needs still. And they're not a substitute for, not exercising. Like, we still need to protect our heart. We still have to do exercise. We still have to create that signal and that stress adaptation. So very critical. Next is growth hormone related peptides. And I think there's a lot of confusion around this. So growth hormone peptides, there's two things that people are confused on. They think of it as like an anabolic, which it's not a steroid. It's a signaling molecule that tells your body to release its own growth hormone. This is something that your body does naturally. It just declines with age, and it doesn't replace the stimulus for strength training. Like, you still have to go to the gym and lift weights, because these peptides are not going to just build muscle out of nothing. So we need that stimulus of strength training. We need adequate nutrition, and we need good sleep. These peptides are like amplifiers of that. So if all those things are in place, they are going to amplify those signals. You're recovering because you're sleeping well. You're building muscle because you're training, but your body just kind of losing that signal a little bit of that growth hormone. And so replacing it a little bit can benefit, especially as we get older. We don't want to overdo it. There's other videos that I have on IGF-1. And, if you have questions about the cancer aspect of it, I would recommend watching that. And then there's GHK copper. So this one is very fascinating from the longevity, aging biology perspective. So it's very abundant in youth, and it declines with age. And it's also been shown that it influences like gene expression. In fact, a third of our genome is regulated or impacted by this peptide, which again is a natural peptide that our body produces. It's 3 amino acids plus copper. They form a complex, and it can go in and change gene expression. So it influences things like tissue repair, collagen production, hair follicle signaling. So I have lots of little baby hairs because I've been using it for a couple of months. It keeps your hair growing. It also helps with inflammation. What really interests me is that it changes our gene expression patterns towards a more like youthful state. Again, it's not like, I'm not saying we should go back to being babies, but we are seeing improvements in things that we want as we age to be a little bit improved, if that makes sense. So yes, it's kind of touted online as a cosmetic peptide, but I don't think of it necessarily that way. Although it does help with skin and hair, it's also helping with repair, regeneration, like signals that, they show up in the hair and the skin because those tissues turn over quickly, but we're also seeing it in, just the rest of the body as well as being very supportive. The other peptide that I like to use as I age is thymosin alpha-1. This is an immune peptide. So we have, immunosenescence or immune aging. This is one of the most overlooked aspects of aging, in my opinion, because it's not sexy. Like, it's not the skin and the hair. It's like the immune system. Who cares about that? But as we get older, immune signaling, it becomes less precise. That's where we can get more inflammation happening. Our immune system's less adaptive than it was when we were younger. And so that's why even with COVID, right, it was a lot of elderly people that were being targeted by that virus. The immune system becomes dysregulated, less adaptive as we age. And so this peptide can help to support the immune system. And I use it very strategically to support immune resilience. And for me personally, because I'm pretty healthy, I use it, if I'm stressed or there's travel, I'm going to be around a ton of people like I was last week with my big meeting with my day job and being around thousands of people. So I did take this ahead of time and during the time that I was there to give my immune system a fighting chance. And so it can be used that way. It can also be used in conjunction with vaccines as we get older. It helps to support that, just the immune signaling and the adaptability of the immune system. And, there's other uses as well. It does also support chemotherapy because that destroys your immune system. And so this peptide can help to support and build that back up after chemotherapy. Finally, let's talk about KPV. This is another tiny tripeptide, 3 amino acids. And this actually touches everything. It's like the gut immune interface. So it helps with regulating inflammation, immune balance, and the epithelial barrier integrity, meaning the gut lining. It helps to repair that. I think of it as a communication peptide between the gut and the immune system. And since chronic low-grade inflammation often starts in the gut, that's where that leaky gut happens, and then it can trigger the immune system to overreact. So anything that supports that has downstream effects on pretty much everything: metabolic health, immune health, even cognitive aging, because again, remember, it's related to inflammation. So I'm going to leave you with the big picture. Peptides work best when the foundation is solid, the signal makes biological sense, and you're willing to reassess instead of endlessly stacking. So not all peptides need to be used forever. I get this question a lot, like, oh, do we have to take them forever? Some maybe, and some are for a purpose, right? If you're repairing your gut health, you don't need to be on that forever. You repair the gut and you go off of it. Like an antibiotic, you wouldn't be on that forever. You would be using it for a specific purpose, a specific time, and then you're going off of it. Other things like your vitamin C, I like to think of peptides as kind of like their signals, right? So things like you wouldn't expect to take vitamin C and have immune benefits and collagen benefits for the rest of your life. Like you have to continue taking it. That's like with GHK copper, for example. So it depends on the peptide. Some are for a purpose. Some are more long-term signaling things that need to be present. But biology changes, seasons change, and we don't need to necessarily take the same peptides all the time. Now, I don't use peptides to fight aging, right? I don't think of it that way. I use them to work with my aging biology, to support it. It's intentional, it's selective, it's respecting the system, it's understanding the system, and what can I do to support it? And that's the difference between strategic longevity and sort of biohacking chaos of just doing everything that, looks cool. But peptides, all these things, they work better supported with strength training and adequate nutrition and good sleep. So again, they're tools, they're not magic. We need to have that foundation solid before we add on, the drapes and the nice paint job to the house, right? Got to have that foundation built first. So if you take nothing else from this video, longevity isn't about copying anyone else's protocol. It's about learning how to listen to your biology, measure what matters, and then intervene with intention. Use science to age well, not perfectly obsess over everything, but just to be strategic, right? And to support your biology. If you want more deep dives like this, where we talk about the why behind the tools, then subscribe to my channel. And if you're overwhelmed by where to start small. One test, one habit, one feedback loop. That's how real longevity is built.